So everyone, welcome to my first podcast in quite a while. We are going to be discussing something that can be difficult to talk about, which is loneliness and feelings of isolation. It's really hard to be talking about this topic because in a way it's still a little bit fresh for me. I don't claim that from this conversation that I know all of the answers. I don't claim that I have completely obliterated loneliness. This is my journey, you know. This is about me. I'm going to be speaking from the I. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to say that this is going to cure your loneliness. I'm just sharing about what worked for me. So I feel like it will be a little bit beneficial to start off with the story, right? With the story of, you know, my loneliness phase that I experienced pretty recently, to be honest. So in my adult years, I keep on moving. My sense of identity just kept on being rocked with so many different things, be it circumstances, be it, you know, things that other people have done, be it, you know, from my own actions and so on and so forth. But I think it kind of started, this whole loneliness thing, when I moved back to the UK. So pre-2020, I was living back home in Southeast Asia. And that was completely like, that wasn't my desire at all. It wasn't from my own autonomy to be moving back to Asia. I had to, without going too much into detail, but I had to. And that really, again, rocked my sense of identity, my sense of self, sense of belonging as well, most importantly, I think. And I have just built my life here in the UK. Lol at me saying that I'm not gonna get too much into it, but then I'm I'm telling you the story from like the beginning. But here we are, okay? It's fine. I just thought that it's important to tell you a more whole context, so that you understand where I'm coming from and like why this is so hard on me. I had to move back home, and I feel like y'all already know that I don't have a very good relationship with my parents. And so when I had to come back home and live back with my parents, that was really, really fucking hard for me, right? That was really, really fucking hard for me. So I'm just gonna go back to recent years, which is where I really started experiencing loneliness to the point of isolation, which I feel like I've never experienced that extreme of a degree of loneliness before in my life. But it was when I broke my leg in 2022, and my loved ones didn't really know about it. I didn't really share it with a lot of people other than maybe just one or two of my friends. It was a really fucking hard time for me, you know? I was just driven into isolation because it was such a vulnerable time in my life that I became so afraid. I became so consumed with the stories in my mind about myself, about my sense of self, my sense of lovability, my sense of worth. And somehow I got convinced by the stories in my head that, you know, people didn't care about me enough. This is an active core wound that I am, you know, actively working on. And I laugh because it is hard. Because I'm a Gemini. I have funeral giggles, okay? That is the only reason why I'm laughing. It's actually really hard. So, I think because it was just such a vulnerable place in my life that I couldn't risk. I thought that I wasn't able to risk being rejected, you know? Because rejection is on the line, right? I wanted to tell people. I really wanted to have that love and validation of the hurt that I'm feeling. However, again, I was just so consumed by the stories in my head. It was so convincing that it was just telling me that, like, if I tell these stories are telling me that, like, if I tell my friends about how I feel, that they might shut me down. They might not understand how much it hurts. So I probably should have said this more towards the beginning. But basically, who this podcast or video or this chat, I suppose, is for. This is for people who feel like they don't have a lot of friends. And for people who think that... No, actually, before I say that, I wanted to ask y'all here on Twitch. If you didn't know, I'm actually recording this live on Twitch. So if you wanted to be a part of this experience in the future, then go follow me on Twitch. It's the same username as Tika is Human. But for those of you who are here in chat, and if you're up to having this conversation with me, I wanted to ask you, like, what do you do when you're lonely? What do you think is the solution when you are lonely? And don't think about this too hard, okay? Just whatever comes to your mind when you think about loneliness, what's the solution? When someone is lonely, my brain goes to making new friends, right? I didn't have many people, and I thought that the solution is to have more people in my life and to have these relationships that I feel connected to. These are relationships that I can feel seen in, heard in, loved, that I can have fun in, and so on and so forth. But I found that, okay, this is point number 1. I changed my mindset on friends. This is what I wanted, right? I was looking for... I thought that the solution is to get more friends. To have more friends in my life, to have like this... But actually, very specifically, I thought that I really needed deep connection with people, especially because I've gone on this spiritual journey, right? I thought that I no longer relate to people who are still, again, I just want to remind you that this was the way I thought. I don't think this way anymore. I just wanted to make that clear. And I'm kind of scared of saying this, but I will. Just so we're being authentic here. And I feel like, again, I'm probably not the only one who thinks this way. Like when I went on my spiritual journey, I kind of stopped relating to people who aren't actually, you know, on their healing journey themselves or spiritual journey themselves. And back then I was thinking like, oh, a lot of people are still on this, like, they're still striving for materialism, and like, I'm not all about that anymore because I have a stronger sense of spirituality now and blah blah blah. Like, it's so I cringe now. I cringe now thinking about that, because that's, like, ironically, that's so egotistical. That was so egotistical of me, because it's like, it's still thinking that I'm better than other people, when like, no, you're not necessarily a better person for having, you know, a deeper sense of spirituality. That is not a requirement for you to be good. And also, there are no hierarchies. No one is better than anyone else, and like, we're all equals, we're all the same, we're all one, and so on and so forth. So that's a flawed way of thinking, I think. I can really see those Gemini energies playing a part, and I mean that in a good way. Cheeky says, I'm sorry, this is just the way it is. And I think loneliness happens when there's like kind of a lack of connection, right? That's why you feel lonely. You feel disconnected because you're not connected. And I think connection is the key here. And I kind of mentioned this in a previous Twitch stream, which is the most wholesome stream that you can still watch. It's going to be on my Twitch page forever, that stream, because it was so wholesome. The best stream I've had in a while. So if you want to have some wholesome vibes, go and check that out. But that's a tangent. That's another tangent. What things started shifting for me when I realized that is all or nothing thinking. That is all or nothing thinking. Not every single friendship has to be deep. Not every single friendship has to be deep. Not everyone can be everything for me. When I started to shift my mindset of that, because in a way, I was in a place in my life where I didn't want to settle, right? I believe that anything can happen. I believe that if I were to have a relationship, then I deserve the best relationship ever, you know? And I still believe that. At the same time, I also want to be more compassionate about like where other people are as well, you know? A lot of people are just dealing with their own crap. People are just dealing with life in the best way they know how. And most of the time, it's not personal. Again, this is what I have learned when things started shifting for me, is when I started to recognize and find the little sparks, the little connections that I experience through many different kinds of interactions. Like, deep connection doesn't always have to be in the form of heart to hearts, right? It doesn't necessarily have to, of course, like deep connection exists in those interactions, in those kinds of relationships where you can be free to be yourself, where you can tell whatever it is that you are struggling with, and you know that other person is going to accept you no matter what it is that you say, no matter what it is that you have done. Of course there's like deep connection in that. But then I realized that, like, you know what? There's also connection when I interact with like the cashier at the supermarket and they smiled at me and said, "Have a good day." You know? I know that that can be a little bit like, well, that's just what they say, right? That's what their employer wants them to say. But then sometimes it can be genuine as well, you know? And even if that was something that is just like training from to be a good employee in this company, you have to say "have a good day." And of course, like, there is a degree of fakeness to that. At the same time, there is also connection in that, you know, smiling at a stranger, right? I realized that even when I hang out with people that I don't feel this deep connection that I was really craving, where, oh, I'm not really feeling this conversation, the topic is not very interesting, I don't really, you know, even if I'm thinking like, oh, I want to have deep conversations, I want to talk about the universe and philosophy and blah blah blah, and like, why are humans like this and that. When I started seeing that there is connection in just talking about the most mundane shit, like, you know, complaining about work, that's when things shifted for me. I started recognizing that every friend can have different roles as well. This is where not everyone can be everything for me comes in, right? I was really looking for that, like, one person where I can have fun with, I can have deep conversations with, I can, you know, all these things all at once, like one package. But then not everyone can be like that, you know? And it's okay that, like, I have different friends that I can go to for different things, for different needs. And it doesn't mean that I'm like selfish or like I'm using them, you know? I don't think so. It's just like, I find that that's just the way my relationships or friendships are. It's like, sometimes I go to this person, I go to friend A if I want to have fun. I can't necessarily like tell them if I'm feeling like a baby, you know, if I'm feeling like hurt from, you know, nobody wishing me a happy birthday. Maybe I can't really go to that person because maybe they don't have the tools, right? That's not their natural inclination, that's not their gift to like console people and feeling seen. Maybe their gifts is like bringing out the fun in the mundane things, right? Everyone is different. So things really started shifting for me. I know that this is only my first point, but it's a huge shift when I recognized that. connection doesn't just lie in deep conversations. You know, deep conversation. And when I mean deep conversations, I mean, you know, talking about more philosophical things about like, why does this exist? Why does this happen? Or whatever, right? That's not that deep. But for a while, so Kate says, for a while I thought that conversations without depth and meaning are pointless. Exactly, same. I also thought that as well. Like, I thought that that was pointless. Because even, you know, even before my spiritual journey and all that, before I got interested in like more philosophical things and psychology and things like that, even before then, I really enjoyed having deep conversations, you know, at 4 a.m. while you have a glass of wine, or maybe 5. Like, that's one of the things that I put on my Bumble BFF profile, you know, like, this is my ideal friendship date, is one where we're just at home. We're nowhere fancy. We're just at home. But it's like 4 a.m. We've got glasses of wine. We've got bottles of wine at home. And we're just talking about all these deep shit. Right? And that's my jam. And I thought that this is like that's the moment where I feel like, oh, life is so good. I love this. I love you. I love this conversation. I love our friendship, whatever. So yeah, I also thought that it's completely pointless to talk about like you know, just like small talk. I really was so averse to small talk. Now, again, this is what helped me like stop isolating myself, start feeling more connected in life. Is like, I now see small talk as a gateway. You know, it's a gateway towards those deeper conversations, towards those deeper, you know, connections, right? How many times can I say connection in this chat? Does anyone want to tally? So yeah, Kate says, but like you said, there is meaning in the lighter conversations too. Exactly. It's like the lighter conversations, again, depending on like what the conversation is like, it can be a gateway if you think about it that way, right? Because like, you can't just go straight. I don't know if it's possible. If anyone has ever done that, I would love to hear it. Have you ever had just like a deep conversation like straight away? Because I never have. It always does start off with something a little bit lighter, something a little bit like you're just kind of asking to be polite, or just because like, oh, I don't really know what to say, or like trying to get through the awkwardness or whatever. I guess it's like being comfortable with awkwardness as well, you know? That's unfortunately, that's kind of the prerequisite to deeper connection, you know? Kate says, meaning is everywhere. I guess we all view it to be different. Yes, exactly. That's the reframe as well. It's to find a little bit more meaning in the smallest things. Because when you are so lonely and when you're so isolated, it's going from like deep deprivation, right? So like, even, it's like if you think about being in a desert, like even the smallest drops of water, that can be maybe not nourishing. Maybe nourishing is not the right word. But that has an impact, right? If you're deeply deprived, if you're deeply, if you're so fucking thirsty, like even drops of water, that will add up, right? Again, maybe can't really use that analogy in real life. I'm not sure how scientifically accurate that would be. But you know, if you think about like the drips on your faucet that's fucking, you know, broken, if you actually put like a bucket underneath that thing, even though they're drops and you think, oh, it's fine, it's just drops, it's not gonna be much water, I'm not gonna waste that much water. But like if you put a fucking bucket underneath it for a while, that bucket will fill up, even though it's slow. But you know, when you're in that deep starvation, dehydration of connection, the smallest of things, every small things count, right? This is also something really important, is to recognize my tendency to isolate myself. It might be hard in the beginning, and not everyone has a tendency to isolate themselves. I noticed this in myself though, is like, and this is why reflection is so important, right? This is why self-awareness and like really sharpening those skills is so important, because you can then be aware about your own tendencies, right? And I had that tendency. I developed this tendency to isolate myself. And if you also have that, if you also notice that, like, so for me, I know that for me, when I want to really retract, when I really want to withdraw myself and feel so, it's like that magnetic force in a way, like it's that strong, where I feel so like I really don't want to like reach out to someone, and I really want to be by myself, when I really want to isolate myself, or not isolate, when I really want to be alone, I know that that's me isolating myself, and I know that what's actually going to be nourishing for me is to reach out to someone. So, you know, sometimes, of course, like, again, with the nuance, right? There's always nuance here. Of course, like, I'm not saying that, you know, being by yourself or being alone is not good, because it is, right? It absolutely is. I think being alone, or like the ability to be alone, is so important, you know? It's so important for you to still have time by yourself, time to spend by yourself. I think it's so important to be comfortable being by yourself, being with yourself. That's a very important skill and time in your life. It's just that for me, I noticed that I have that tendency. So when I feel that way, I know that when I'm struggling and I just want to be by myself, I don't want to share anything with other people, I know that that's actually when I really need to reach out to someone. So again, that self-awareness is so important, because if you don't have that skill, I suppose, to witness yourself, like take yourself away and look at yourself, right? That's gonna be hard for you to clock, especially if you are so deeply entrenched in that loneliness and isolation. Now I know, though. Now I know. Of course, it's not gonna be... Oh, sorry. Of course, it's not gonna be like immediate, right? Immediate. If I don't like, if I retract myself, now I know I have to reach out. Like, it's not that instant, of course. Still. Knowing and having that self-awareness really helps to shorten, at least shorten that that unnecessary period of isolation, you know. Oh my god. This is a really good point. So Kate says, I feel I spend too much time on my own, but that's actually how I learned to be a good friend. Spending time on my own. I guess becoming a friend to myself in a sense. That reminds me of this quote. I don't remember exactly how it goes. I remember I put it as, I put it in one of my vlogs. So it's like, it really stuck in my head, but it's how... It's talking about how even relationships with other people, you can't even feel how deeply it is if you don't have that period where you are able to reflect, you know? And how can you reflect? It's hard to reflect when you're with other people, unless they're helping you reflect, right? Unless they are actually like being curious and asking you questions, asking you open-ended questions about how you feel and things like that. Of course, like, you can reflect with other people. But if your mind is constantly being stimulated by, whether that be like conversations, whether that even be by hearing cars zooming in, like if you live in the city and you just hear cars all the time, like, that's still stimulation in the ear, right? If you're constantly listening to podcasts if you're dependent on podcasts to do your chores or go out for your walks, like, you're not fucked. It's just you have so much less time or space, right? Your mind has so much less space. And like, that connection, again, actually happens when you reflect. So I probably completely butchered that quote, but I just thought that was so interesting. So I also wrote here in my points, like, reach out to old friends. I know it's like it's such a basic thing. It's so basic, but it's a lot, you know? I guess this is for you if, okay, again, speak from the eye. I'm speaking from the eye. So I think it's also being flexible with yourself, with your standards. Like, it's good to have big standards. It's good to know that you don't want to settle. And at the same time, sometimes those standards, if they're a bit too high, it can go cross like that more all or nothing kind of situation, right? And again, when you're in deep deprivation, when you're like super fucking lonely, it's not going to be really helpful. You know, every little helps, right? Is that Tesco's motto or something? But it's so true. Every little helps. You know, that's another mindset that helped me. Every little helps. But yeah, my mindset was like, I have to make new friends. I have to have friends who are like in real life that I can see face to face, because I find more fulfillment and more fun when I see people face to face, right? I mean, that's just undeniable, I feel like. Like, no online interaction can beat like face to face. Maybe. Maybe some online interactions can beat face to face ones. But again, it's like being more flexible and finding the connection in many different forms, right? Because my mindset was like, no, for whatever reason, I was thinking like my old friends wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be able to feel that connection again. The connection that I used to feel with my old friends. I don't know where the fuck these beliefs even come from. See, this is why it's also really important. This is why I vouch for expressing your thoughts, because expressing in the form of writing or speaking, right? Even if it's like speaking to your own phone and like to just like your voice notes, or even to a mirror, just like going old fashioned, you know? It's so important because sometimes you're like, you hear yourself talking, you hear these beliefs, and you're like, what the heck? Like, does that happen to anyone else? Like, when you speak your thoughts, when you have a fear or something, and then you express it, and then you hear it or you see it, if it's in the form of writing, if you read it, you're like, what? This doesn't even make any sense. Like, where does this even come from? You know? So that's also really important. A lot of reflection, a lot of expression, right? Again, this is why art is also very healing, because art is a form of expression and so on and so forth. And what really also helped is, and this is not like this is not original, I actually learned this from one of my favorite YouTubers at the time. Her name is Caroline Winkler. She's so fucking funny. She's hilarious, and like her YouTube videos can be so unserious, but also I love how wholesome and compassionate she can be as well. But I really learned this from one of her videos, or I think it was her podcast actually. Not another podcast. Is that what it's called? Not for everyone. It's called Not for Everyone. But she talked about how she treated like socialization almost like a chore. I know that sounds weird. It's not to, because like a chore, I feel like the connotation with chores is like, oh, I don't want to do chores. Like, it's something that you don't want to do. And in a sense, it is something that you really don't want to do, right? If you're like me and you're a little bit more introverted and you have become a little bit too comfortable by yourself, you've become a little bit too comfortable just like sitting on the sofa and just being content with that. It's a chore. It is, right? It is a chore to actually like go out, to meet people, to arrange like these coffee dates or arrange these karaoke sessions with people or whatever. Like, it is a chore. It can be, especially when you're, again, like me, I was so afraid of rejection. You know, I was so afraid. I don't know why, but like a lot of people who are in my life right now, or in the past as well, yeah, a lot of people in my life that I can see face to face, I think we just have different priorities. I think that's what it is. They don't have, like, maybe the concept of friends in general, or me and our relationship, like, the priority isn't very high, and they have other priorities. And so when I ask them to, like, go out or whatever, I get rejection, right? A lot of the times. I'm noticing that my brain wants to say that it's all the time, but it's not. And that's what the brain does. It's like it likes to go through absolutions when it's not very true. So that's also a key skill. It's a key skill to notice when the brain does that. When the brain likes to be all doom and gloom, you know, but it's not true. So yeah, when I say that when Caroline says treating socialization as a chore, she doesn't necessarily mean that it's like something that you dread, but she was saying that if you want to make friends, which, to be fair, I do want to mention something that I learned recently from Dr. K, Healthy Gamer. It is important here to note, I think, that making new friends doesn't necessarily mean that you will stop being lonely, right? Because, like Kate mentioned on Twitch, there's a difference between being alone and loneliness, right? And that's right, you know. This reminds me of what Dr. K was saying from Healthy Gamer about this video or topic. He has so many different, like, videos and stuff on loneliness, and, like, what I learned is that there's so many different ways to handle this, to stop loneliness, or to at least dissipate that loneliness a little bit in your life, so that it doesn't consume you, so that you don't get to the point of isolation. So I think the point of isolation is, like, the worst, you know, level of loneliness, right? But one of the ways is to kind of reframe it, the way that you think about being alone or, like, being lonely. Because there's a difference between loneliness and solitude, right? So that's one of the things that he proposed, is, like, to have solitude, actually, to be by yourself. Because you could have so many friends and still be lonely. You could be surrounded by thousands of people and feel lonely, right? You can even be, like, a rock star and, like, you have all these fans who love you, or, like, if you're, like, a huge streamer and you have thousands of people coming to your streams every time you go live, and all these people, like, pouring these hearts into your chat, or, like, sending you letters to your PO box and whatever, and then you can still feel lonely. So, like, making new friends or having a partner, like a romantic partner or whatever, like, that wouldn't necessarily heal loneliness, right? It could help, though, right? It could help. It is an element, it is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole puzzle in itself, right? So just wanted to say that before I actually get into my point. If you are looking for friends, right, a way that and I know that this is a little bit, I realize that this is a little bit contradictory to my title, because I'm saying that I healed loneliness without actually making new friends. I feel like I kind of didn't, you know. I met I've gained new acquaintances. They're not really friends though, because it's different, right? When you, like, a stranger becomes an acquaintance becomes a friend, right? I think it's even like the fact that I'm trying to make friends. Because coming back to the very first point is that, you know, there's connection in many different forms of interactions, many different forms of relationships, many different forms of experiences, right? And I don't know, something about me trying to get myself out there, that helps me. That helps with my sense of agency, you know? That helps that, like, hey, I am doing something about this. And again, when I have those little laughs or that little compliment that I get, like, oh, that's a cute pin or whatever, like, from someone else, right? Again, those sparks of connection, right? Those sparks of connection. Little ones, little drops. If you want to make new friends, kind of treat it like it's like your health in a way, you know? You know how our society, especially in 2023, 2024, I mean, it's 2024 now. You know, I feel like there's so many people now recognizing the importance of health, right? And we really prioritize, like, taking care of our well-being, like our physical well-being, right? So treating making new friends as that as well, you know, considering it as important as that and something that you actively need to be doing as well, and to show up even when you do not want to, you know, because it's something that you need to do, right? It's for your well-being. Like, this is for our well-being. Like, we've heard about the loneliness epidemic and all that stuff, right? We've heard about the dangers of the effects of loneliness being, you know, even worse than smoking cigarettes and things like that, I think. I am not using many reliable evidence. I probably should have. I should have come armed with my stats, but I didn't. Because I just wanted to share things that actually worked for me. And so that helped, right? And then some of the practical things that I did in this regard is that I finally sought out help, really. And I joined this group coaching program. So, because I was thinking, like, oh, I need therapy, right? I need a psychologist. I need a therapist to help with my psyche and my, you know, whatever, right? And of course, that is helpful. I'm not gonna say that it's not gonna be helpful. It's just, I was thinking that, like, group coaching, because group coaching, it's like you being in a community and then you help each other. And that really, honestly, that really helped me. When, if you don't have a support system like I did, you know, I didn't really have a solid support system other than maybe like my husband, which, you know, of course, I'm very grateful to have him. And like my best friend, who is, again, very, very far away. But other than that, there's just not much support system that I had. If you have a lack of that, then creating, I mean, I know that it sucks because like you need money, right? You need to pay for this. It's not just something that you can form by yourself. I mean, you could, I suppose, if you reach out to people. There's different costs, right? If you reach out to different people, the cost is like your own energy and your own like resilience and things like that, right? With things like this, the cost is money, you know, and like money can be tight, so on and so forth. We know that. It is a little bit more affordable though, I think, compared to like therapy. So honestly, that's kind of why I went for it as well, because I had priorities with saving and financials and things like that. So group coaching really, really helped me because it was basically, it helped me have this sense of community of people who care about me, that I know have my back, and we meet regularly. And meeting regularly, I learned, is really important as well. Like that's why it's so hard to make friends as adults, we know, and also in, you know, in 2024, where we don't really have what's called third places anymore, right? Like we have our home. The first place is home, second place is work, and then third is like what? Like we don't have, you know, a lot of people don't go to church anymore, you know, for example, or like a lot of people don't go to community centers anymore. Like the access to those places can be very limited, when, you know, back then, that's where people form communities, that's where people form relationships or friendships. How regularly? Like every month? Or so that's what Numinet says. Numinet on Twitch says how regularly, like every month or so. So there's no, from what I've heard, again, basically from Dr. K of Healthy Gamer, it's not necessarily like oh, it has to be weekly or monthly or bi-weekly, you know, like it's not necessarily that. It's just like we make friends a little bit more naturally when we go somewhere, when we go to a place in a more regular cadence for a common cause, you know. So I'm not sure exactly how regularly, but that's, you just have to be with other people, or meeting, again, you just have to have like this common cause. Like it can be a yoga class, right? When you go to a yoga class, the cause is like, well, you're attending a class, right, for yoga. It's about consistency. Exactly. Because with regular contact, when you are constantly being exposed to each other naturally, like that relationship just builds by itself. Of course there's gonna be, you know, things that you need to actively do, right, to form those relationships and move that level of relationship forward. Of course there's that as well. The regularity, the consistency helps. So that's just one of the things that I learned about making friends. And, you know, I started going into things like, this is the part where I talk about the things that so many people say. You know, so many people say this, right? Oh, if you want to make friends, then, you know, go to a yoga class, go to look up like art classes or whatever your hobby is, and find a community or a group meeting of the thing that you are passionate about or that you have a hobby on, like a knitting community or whatever, right? It does help. Again, it doesn't necessarily help me make friends. I haven't really made friends. Even though, like, for example, I've been going to a book club, you know, for a year at this point. I find that like monthly isn't enough. That's me though. That's just my experience. Monthly is not like regular enough. It's not yeah, it's just not very, it's not often enough. What's the word? You know what I mean. But again, it's about, sometimes it's just about like just being with other people. You know, like I said, when I go to a yoga class, again, I get upset, you know, when in the beginning of this journey, I get upset when like I go to a yoga class or a book club or whatever, and then I come home with no new friends, like with no new coffee dates scheduled in my calendar, right? With no new people that I can text on WhatsApp, you know, like I get sad and I feel like, oh, this is a waste, or like that was a fail, you know. It's not though. It's not a fail, because building relationships take time. As annoying as it is, it does take time. It does take, I think, both parties to wanna do it, you know? I learned that like it can't just be me. It can't just be me who wants to have this relationship, right? Although of course I do have that power within me to do something to again move that relationship forward, right? At the same time, that person also needs to want it too, and a lot of people are just not in the place to have new friends, you know? So yeah, I also did some volunteering, you know, again, just like classic stuff that people talk about when they give advice about like making new friends. But I think ultimately, I just want to close with like, ultimately what I've found with this, how I healed and how I stopped isolating myself, is like slowly building up my bank, you know, slowly filling up my cup with drops of connection, you know. And the way that I was able to do that was I actually wrote it down. You know, I actually wrote these things down, because it's just kind of like your regular old, you know, reprogramming of the mind, right? Because for me, I had these like default thoughts that I default into thinking, which are things like, oh, I have no friends, right? And these are thoughts that I don't necessarily want to be thinking, that I don't necessarily want to be my reality, that don't necessarily serve me, right? So those are thoughts that I try to reprogram, right? So I think about and write down this is important for me, is to write down what I want to be feeling instead. And I keep saying it to myself every time. And again, that's where the self-awareness is so important, because you need to be able to catch yourself. You need to be able to catch your brain when it says things like that, when it spits out things like, I have no friends. This cannot happen to me. I can't make any more new friends anymore. It's really hard to find, you know, cool people. I don't live in an environment that supports this kind of thing, whatever, like all these things, like things that lean a little bit more negative. I try to reprogram that and I write it down. And if you want, I made a Notion for this, a Notion dashboard that you can use, a thought log where you can log these things and like where you can log these things and put in your pocket, in your phone, right? Because every time there's evidence that supports the affirmation that I want to believe, I write it down. And so then I have this like bank of evidence that I can refer to, that I can look at anytime I fall or slip back into that like spiraling negative thoughts, right? I have all this evidence because sometimes our brain needs that, right? We need that evidence to see, you know? We can't just rely on our memory, because when we're spiraling and we're feeling that isolation, that sadness, that disappointment, that hopelessness, when we are entrenched in that emotion, you know, the emotions trump logic, right? So then you forget all those things in your life that proves that you do have these things actually. Yes, you do have a lot of moments actually where you felt loved, right? And when you can see it, when you have a bank of things that you can see, of evidence, and I'll show you in the screen later if you're on YouTube. Sorry if you're not seeing this right now on Twitch. It just really helps seeing that evidence, you know? Anytime your mental state goes downhill, right? And you are caught up in the emotions, right? So if you are interested in that thought log, go ahead and go to the description box and check out the link. You just need to sign up and I'll send you this thought log. I really want to share it with people because it was so helpful for me. And it really actually, you know, I already talked about the importance of self-awareness and all that, right? That thought log helps like train me to be a lot more self-aware about the thoughts that are happening, about the emotions, because in this thought log I designed it in a way where like you can log like your emotions and like just have a look, okay? Just sign up and then I'll send you the link to download it. And it just helps with that self-awareness and like catching your thoughts when you have this thought log. So I've designed it in a way where it's like easy for you to do that and all that stuff, okay? I designed it very thoughtfully, this thought log. So thank you so much. People are saying that it's helpful on Twitch. So thank you for that. So yeah, go and download that thought log if you are interested in, you know, developing that self-awareness about the different parts of yourself that are saying these things as well. Or maybe like you want to know, because I think what's also really useful that should be done in like early on in this, well, for me what I did that was super useful was like I actually reflected on like where is this loneliness coming from, right? If it's connected to a wound, what wound is it? And like, again, developing that self-awareness of what your wounds even are, and like understanding where it comes from, that's super important as well, because that then helps me stop thinking that there's like something wrong with me. You know, that like, oh, this started from somewhere. Like, oh, I adopted this from somewhere else. And like, I wasn't just born like being lame and nobody wants to be my friend and like I'm doomed to be alone for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? So it's really important in my journey to know like where these things comes from. And of course, I'm a tarot person, and of course what really helped me was tarot. I'm actually that's the next newsletter that I have been working on for literally a year at this point. I've been writing this newsletter for a year, okay? So it's a long time coming. But it was just so insightful. It finally made me understand why this is so hard for me. This just Cheeky says this just in. Tarot reader uses tarot. I know, right? It's just okay. I'm hilarious. No, you're hilarious, Cheeky. Well, you know, if you're interested in knowing what that is for you, then you can book a unraveling tarot reading with me. Again, I'll leave the link in the description down below. And we can look into that, you know, we can look at like, what is it that makes it so hard for you to reach out? Because again, when you know what that obstacle is, right? When you understand what that obstacle is for you, because it can be personal for everyone, you then know how to navigate that, right? You then know how to actually get over the obstacle, you know? So if you're interested in knowing what that is for you, or, you know, just like getting comforting words when you're feeling hopeless, when you're feeling so lonely, you can book a reading with me. It can be just, the unraveling is basically like, it can be about anything. So you can just like let me know that this is the issue for you and we can do that. You can even just mention like, hey, I watched your video or podcast about this thing and I'm interested in that. And then, you know, we can talk about it. But that's something that I can do is for you as well. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for tuning in. And I want to leave you with this song. Not this song. I know that this song is building up. I want to leave you with this song. And you know why? Well, the people on YouTube are not going to be able to hear this. Where do I sign up for the newsletter? It is in... Here you go. Oh, actually Nightbot just gave the link as well. It's compassionately resilient. But the link is the tikaishuman.substack.com. Thank you for asking. Thank you so much, everyone. Seriously, for everyone who was here in the live stream, thank you so much. I appreciate your company. I appreciate all your feedback, all the love, and sharing your experiences as well. You know, it helps me to hear that, like, you can relate to that in real time as well.